Hi there, RV owners. Today in our 2015 Tiffin Phaeton, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Demco's Air Force One second motorhome kit. A second motorhome kit is great if you were already flat towing a vehicle, but you upgraded and purchased yourself a new motorhome. You've gotten rid of your old one and you're ready to flat tow your vehicle with your new motorhome. But your new motorhome, if you have an Air Force One system, there are some components that are on the motorhome side. Now, maybe you tried to reuse those from your old one, or you just sold it and you don't have those anymore. You can purchase this kit here, and it's going to come with everything you need for your motorhome side, so you can get that motorhome fully equipped to plug right into your vehicle that already has Demco's Air Force One. On our motorhome side, we have to mount up a couple of components. The first thing we need to mount up, and this is the main thing, is our tank here. And this is where all of our hoses are going to connect. You can see here we've got our hoses attached to it. And you can really put this wherever you want to put it. I do recommend putting it probably somewhere near the rear axle towards the back of the vehicle rather than towards the front half, just to minimize the length of hoses that you're going to need to run. We've mounted ours on a cross beam right here, just in front of our rear axle. And we just drilled straight through this cross beam. And then the tank here comes pre-mounted onto the bracket, so we just ran some bolts down through the bracket and then just clamped it right on with some nuts. We did have to change the hardware out as this beam was a little too long, so the bolts that come in your kit weren't quite long enough to go straight through it. But if you were mounting this like onto your frame or inside of any of your rear storage compartments, like your battery compartment, if you've got one in the back, that's a great place for it, because the battery compartment's often secluded in its own compartment. It's easy to get to mount it up, and usually the battery compartment's not fully enclosed, so you can easily route your hoses in and out of it without having to drill any holes into it. Once you figure out where you're going to put your container, then we need to start hooking everything up. There's 3 connections that go to your tank. We're going to have one here, and then there's 2 on the opposite side. We're going to start with the side that has a single connection. This is the input side, the supply that goes to our tank. So this is supply air. That's what's going to fill up our reservoir tank here. We're using the 1/4-inch air line that comes in our kit. We just poke it in, and then we'll cut it to length. And this connects into a T that we installed onto the supply air line. Now, to determine which line is your supply air line, you'll first need to drain the air out of your RV's system. To drain the air out, the easiest way to do that is while the vehicle's not running, just key off, just pump the brakes on it. And every time you pump the brakes, it's going to shoot out air. And eventually when you're going to pump out all the air, and there's going to be almost no pressure left. Once we've depressurized it, we're going to be safe to remove the line here. To remove it, these are all quick connects on here, so you just push in on the collar here, and then you can just pull it out. We then, after we pull that out, have an assistant start the motorhome. The compressor will kick on, and it's going to try to re-pressurize your air system. So if you have air coming out of here while it's just running, you know that, hey, this is our supply line. It's going to be a very thick line like this. See how thick this is? And you're going to get a T that's the correct size to slide into that. This is a quick connect, so we just pulled this out. We verify that we have air coming out of it when it runs. And then we cut the line, slide our T on one end, slide the other end of our hose back in, and then we make our connection to our tank here with this 1/4-inch line. Next, we need to make our metered air connection. This one we also need to test to figure out which one is our metered air. The metered air will only have air coming out of it when the brake is being depressed. So to check this one, we got to have all this back together. We'll then disconnect the line we suspect to be our metered air, and then we'll start the vehicle. No air should come out of it while it's running. You'll have to let it idle for a minute, maybe even press your foot on the gas to increase the idle to air the system up faster. And then while this hose is disconnected, have an assistant press the brakes, and you should feel air coming out of it. If you do, you know you've got the right line. We're going to basically do the same thing we did with the other T. We're going to cut it. We're going to slide our T in between the line, plug our ends back in, and then we're going to plug in a 1/4-inch line into it. And this routes back to our tank, and it plugs in right here into the tank. So this is the static 90-degree fitting here. The last one here is going to be a swivel fitting. And then we'll route this line all the way to the back of the motorhome. I just followed down the frame. You can see our line coming out way here in the back. And this is our connection that is going to tie the vehicle side of our Air Force One to the motorhome side. This is our quick connect port at the back where we make those connections together. And then this line here just runs to the back, and it plugs into the fitting that we need to mount here at the back. And this fitting just mounts right into the panel. We just use self-tapping screws to run it in there. You could also drill holes and use nut and bolt, whichever one works best for your particular motorhome. We just need to make sure that's solid. This has a swivel end on it as well, and it's a quick connect just like all of our other fittings, so we're just going to poke these in. And here I'll show you kind of how this whole thing works, how the quick connects work. So we've got our line here routed back. We're going to get roughly the length that we want to about there. When cutting your airline, it's important that you use hose cutters. We've got hose cutters available here at eTrailer. I'm using a more industrial pair for larger size hoses that we do work on here at eTrailer. But for 1/4 inch line like this, we've got smaller pairs that are a little bit easier to fit in tight spaces. And we can see how that end looks there. I mean, that's just a nice, beautiful end. It's still nice and round. We didn't deform it by crushing it, and it's nice and 90 degree from our line. That's going to seal properly inside of our fitting there. So to insert it, it's as simple as pushing it in. That's it. You've made your connection. Now, let's say you've made a connection and you need to move something, so we need to disconnect it. We're just pushing in on this ring, and then we can pull it out. And it's the same way with any of the hoses that have quick connect fittings, including the larger ones that we tapped into over by our tank. Those larger ones, just push in on the larger outer ring and pull it out. They're going to be a little harder than this one just because this is new. Those got a little dirt in there. So what you can do if you're having a hard time pushing this ring in, I use an open end wrench that's close to the similar size, and that just helps you be able to push that ring in, especially on those dirtier, older RVs. So now at this point, I'm just going to go back and zip tie up any of my lines to make sure they stay away from anything moving like your suspension or steering components and anything excessively hot like the exhaust. And that completes our installation of Demco's Air Force One second motorhome kit on our 2015 Tiffin Phaeton.